Welcome to Uncommon Knowledge. I'm Peter Robinson. By the way, please be sure to follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/UNC knowledge. Twitter.com/UNC knowledge. In 2002, Thaddeus McCotter was elected to the United States House of Representatives from Michigan's 11th Congressional District, just northwest of Detroit. Since 2006, Congressman McCotter has served as chairman of the House Republican Policy Committee, a position that makes him, after the minority leader and the minority whip, the third-ranking Republican in the House of Representatives. Now in his fourth term, Congressman McCotter appears often on radio and television, becoming one of the new faces of the Republican Party. Dennis Miller refers to you as Young Thad, I understand.
He refers to me as a lot of things.
Oh,
some of them off the air, who can't repeat here.
Really? I'm happy to hear it. All right.
He's from Pittsburgh. He tends to be surly.
All right. A Detroit man would know that. Segment one, where the GOP stands. Couple of figures. Gallup polling, 1991, 3 years into the presidency of George H.W. Bush. Americans who identify themselves as Democrats and Democratic-leaning, 44%. Republicans and Republican-leaning, 48%. Republicans up 4. 2006, your third term in Congress and 5 years into the presidency of George W. Bush, Democrats and Democrat-leaners are at 40%. Republicans and Republican-leaners, I beg your pardon, the Democrats and Democrat-leaners at 50%. Republicans at 40%. Republicans down 10. What happened?
Well, first, just let me say I'm the fourth highest.
Fourth? Who did I leave out?
Mike Pence, the conference chair.
Sorry.
Who puts everybody on TV, so I don't want him mad at me.
All right.
Or you'll never see my face again, which
Very
might
good.
please many.
All right, you're number 4.
I was born in 65, so if you go back, let's go back to 1964. 1964, Lyndon Johnson landslide, Republican Party dead. 1968, Richard Nixon elected president. Speaking of him, you go to 1973, 74, Republican Party dead. Carter elected in 76. Oh, 1980, Ronald Reagan elected president. 1992, Bill Clinton defeats George Bush. They control everything. It's the end of the Republican Party. It's dead again. 1994 happens. Come 2006, 2008, Republican Party dead. I expect that history will repeat itself. What happened to the Republican Party in many ways was one based upon events. It's a very tumultuous time in America's history. A lot of the difficult decisions that were made by the administration and by the Congress were not greeted very well, but then again, there were never very many better alternatives put forward at the time. Internally, what we became was a national party in our minds, as opposed to what we really are, which is, as a Republican Party, we're not an ideological national movement. We are a philosophical movement based upon people who get elected by district. Politics is the art of the possible. We can differ on certain things, we have shared principles, and then we apply them to the problems of the day. What you started to see was, as we became more national, more centralized, which is the antithesis of what the Republican philosophy is, we began to forget that we represent districts and that you can't do certain things and expect to get reelected, because your public will not allow you to do that. And spending was one of the classic examples.
Okay, you're giving me something that doesn't compute immediately for me, which is the argument that one of the problems the party got into was that it became national rather than local. But I thought that under Denny Hastert and Tom DeLay and the explosion of discretionary domestic spending, that what was taking place was a kind of hypersensitivity to congressmen, to Republican members of the House, district by district by district, in which they were attempting, the leadership then was attempting to play the Democratic game of shoving pork back home as fast as possible, as much as possible.
Actually, that was more of a symptom rather than the disease itself.
Oh, really? Okay, explain that.
Largely the symptom was, if you look at, take for example, an issue like free trade.
Right.
We can argue the merits of it however we want. We can argue the nuances. But if you take free trade and you look at where a lot of our seats were lost, in the Ohio River Valley, in the Northeast, in the Midwest, these are not hotbeds of free trade.
Right.
So what would happen is, as members cast difficult votes, to get them to cast votes that their constituencies might not like or that went too far too fast, the default position was, well, we'll try to help you out with this project in your district. The spending became, to a certain extent, a symptom of members doing things that their constituents did not like, and then the spending would be the default to try to, okay, we'll make them like you with spending. So spending was a problem in terms of some of what we did, but it was largely a symptom of the overarching failure to understand that the party can only move forward so fast on certain issues if the constituencies of the members who are sent there do not want them to go that far that fast.
So the chairman of the House Republican Policy Committee is telling me that the Republican Party erred not by being too provincial, but by being too ideological. You're a piecemeal, bit by bit, let's see what we can get.
Well, I'm a Russell Kirk conservative. I'm a Ronald Reagan conservative. Russell Kirk was born in Plymouth, which is in my district. Russell Kirk, the conservatism is the negation of ideology. Politics is the art of the possible, something Ronald Reagan knew very well. Again, I'm 44. I'm a Republican because of Ronald Reagan. You are a servant of the people. You have to help show them where you need to go. You have to be willing to lead, but you also have to make sure that they're willing to follow because you've made a compelling case.
Well, all right, let me try again this argument. This is a common understanding, and frankly, it seems to me to fit the facts, that during the George W. Bush, last question on the past, by the way, we'll come to the president in just a moment, but that President George W. Bush, made a decision, which was he needed to go to war. It was going to be difficult to carry the country with him. It, in particular, was going to be difficult to carry his own members with him, in the House particularly. So he said to Denny Hastert and Tom DeLay, spend what you need to spend. Is that accurate? Is that what happened?
Well, I would not.
Was the war a step too far?
Was not privy to those conversations, but let's just put it this way. There were many of us who understood, coming from a philosophically conservative background, that when you look at the reconstruction of Iraq, that was where the strategy in Iraq had its problems. You had bipartisan support, although it was before my time, right before I got elected, a bipartisan vote to authorize force for regime change in Iraq.
Right.
That was bipartisan.
Right.
It went well until the reconstruction phase. There were many of us who said you cannot have a top-down Great Society meets Baghdad approach out of the green zone to create a model democracy in Iraq. You have to start from the traditional roots of order and build up, like the United States did from town halls and so forth. What happened was there weren't enough voices arguing that to the administration, within the administration, and many members got caught up in the hope that somehow the green zone top-down would work. Instead, what we should have been doing since 2003, and people like myself argued, was you should have been doing something like the Petraeus plan from day one. And it should have been planned ahead of time, even before the authorization of force was acted upon. Because before you get into something, you have to know what you're going to do. And to take the approach of somehow this was an academic exercise on a blackboard, instead of trying to emancipate people to enjoy their God-given liberty and allow them to develop their democracy themselves with U.S. assistance from the grassroots up. That would have been a much better approach. But when you talk about how the Republican Party responded to this, I think a lot of the spending also came from, well, we know that we have problems over this issue, be it free trade, be it the war, this will help you in your district. Instead of trying to be willing to go out there and differentiate yourself from a bad policy that was failing or to work internally to get that administration to change it.
Segment 2, the crash and the stimulus. 2 quotations. The Economist magazine, quote, as policymakers struggled to save the economy from collapse earlier this year, conservative activists, that would include you, railed irrelevantly. Anybody who's activist enough to get elected to the House, I think that includes you. I assert that. Second quotation, Congressman Thaddeus McCotter. President Obama's stimulus package represented, quote, $1 trillion obscenity, close quote. Why is that not irrelevant railing?
Well, I think we had to point out that the prosperity comes from the private sector, not the public sector. Underlying 2 things, the president has 2 principles that we disagree with. I think one...
This president. We're now on President Obama.
President.
All right.
Although in fairness, let's go back, if you want to go back to the Wall Street bailout, we can do that at some other point,
that's my next question.
Which he agreed with,
right,
but was not his policy as it was implemented. If you don't reassert every chance you get that the public sector is not providing your prosperity, then you're not doing your job as a Republican. You also wanted to point out that we had principal differences with the president. And that if you take $1 trillion of borrowed money and try to grow the economy through what was essentially a government stimulus bill, you're going to drag out this recession and you're going to be worse off than if you had done nothing. So I think that it's quote-unquote not railing to point out the substantive differences between us and this administration. And I think it's also critical for the American people to know, not only did we quote-unquote rail against it, we also provided our own stimulus plan that was dependent upon tax relief for working families, for small businesses, that by the econometrics of this administration would have created twice the jobs at half the cost. They decided to, shall we say, go it alone with their
By the way, could I just ask a question? Let me ask.
Yeah.
The difference between the TARP, the Hank Paulson, Ben Bernanke, George W. Bush bailout measure, and the bailout measure put forward by President Obama. My question is, what does it feel like in the House? On TARP, you had your own administration begging Republican members to go along. It was extremely difficult to figure out. I was trying to figure out how many Republicans are going. They were essentially cutting the deal with the Democrats and trying to bring some Republicans along. On the Obama stimulus package, Boehner and Cantor and Pence, and I presume you were right in the middle of it, actually held every Republican member in opposition. They didn't get a single Republican vote on that bailout. Do you in the House feel energized? You found your political footing now? You've found a way to unite the Republican members? What's the difference in morale and feeling?
Well, with the Wall Street bailout, what we saw...
Wall Street bailout meaning the Paulson...
Yeah, the Paulson.
All right.
Well, that's where he
Paulson
came
Bush.
from.
Right.
With the Wall Street bailout, what you saw was an administration doing the antithesis of what so many of us had come to Congress to do. And in fact, one of the things that we found most repugnant was the saying that these companies, these banks, are too big to fail. At other times in the nation's history, be it Andrew Jackson or be it Theodore Roosevelt, they were not allowed, no private entity was allowed to say we are too big to fail, because nothing is bigger than the American people, only they are too big to fail. So from the very premise that somehow working people's money had to go to the people who helped cause the problem and help collapse the credit markets, I think was repugnant to a lot of us. And the fact that it has been borne out over time plays into the second part of your question. Because even after that thing was passed, all of a sudden it was Paulson and Bernanke saying the toxic asset part of this, which many of you said wouldn't work and we derided you, we're not going to do that, we're going to recapitalize the banks now, which is a vastly different proposition than the removal of the toxic assets. So when you go in, flash forward... Did
you feel that there had been a bait and switch? Or that they were
I thought the whole thing was ridiculous. From the beginning, I thought it was a fundamental shift in how the United States government works vis-a-vis the private sector and vis-a-vis, most importantly, private citizens. When you flash forward to this, you had a lot of our leadership that had supported that was very upset at what happened or didn't happen with the unfreezing of the credit markets, that it hadn't worked. So when you get into the stimulus plan... and
By our leadership, you're talking about House Republicans.
House Republicans,
right.
Because they supported the president, a lot of them. And when they found out that it didn't work, and it wound up from the day we passed it not being implemented as we had been told, even those of us who voted against it, they were kind of upset, as I think you can imagine, human nature being what it is. So having gone down that path, and having had a lot of conservatives and a lot of American people tell them that they didn't like the Wall Street bailout, they certainly didn't want to exacerbate that problem. And so the reaction of the Republican Party to the president's $1 trillion stimulus President Obama was not based upon just a knee-jerk reaction, we don't like this. It was, again, a second reminder of the fundamental principle our prosperity comes from the private sector and not the public sector. So there was very little whipping, if any, going on.
Why did President Obama leave it to Nancy Pelosi and Harry? Actually, as best I can tell, it was mostly the House Democrats who drafted the legislation. Why did he do that? We hear Rahm Emanuel is a very tough chief of staff. They're a very disciplined organization down there in the White House. Why did they field out the drafting of this his first big piece of legislation to the House Democrats?
Well, that's one of the mysteries that they're going to have to answer.
All right.
Because when the
president... It didn't make sense to you either.
No, the president had come to our conference. He'd talked to us. It had gone rather well, very personable, and pledged to work with us. We set up the Cantor working group, of which I was a part of, and some other members, and came up with the plan I talked to you about. And that was at the president's request, was where are your ideas? So House Republicans come up with our ideas, Eric
Boehner.
Cantor. Yep, Eric Cantor and Boehner.
Paul Ryan in on that?
Yeah, Paul was in on that. And they take it, Cantor and Boehner take it over, present it to him, we don't hear anything back. They went their own way. Now, why they did that, I don't know. I don't think it would have been very hard for them to get maybe 30, 40 Republicans to buy into something reasonable. They just decided they were going to do it without us. I think they were so sure that it was going to be successful that they really figured that we were cutting our own throats and opposing it, because from their mindset, the chance to pass $1 trillion spending bill and take it around the country for the next 2 to 3 to 4 years saying, look what wonderful things your government is doing for you by giving you recycled money back that you'll have to pay interest on, well, they seem to think that's all right. For the rest of us, it was like, it's not going to work.
So what we have here is a truly, thoroughly ideological administration.
Well, I don't know that it's ideological. If you're a Democrat and you look at this is how you get elected.
All right.
It's the redistribution of wealth,
Got it.
the
Got
targeted interest.
All right. Segment 3, Obamacare. Congressman Thaddeus McCotter on President Obama's position on health care, quote, "What a revulsion," close quote. Would you care to expand?
The voters are revulsed by it. And I think that the thing that I would like people to focus on is that while they're running ads against Republicans like myself and others.
They are? They're spending money in your district right now?
Not the DNC. It's one of their 136 special interest groups. They're AstroTurf.
All right.
And when you see what Pharma's going to do and others, look, the American people don't like this. They're reading the bill. This isn't a disinformation campaign by anybody except the White House to try to portray their plan as anything but a path to single payer. That's what it is. Americans don't like it.
Single payer being the federal government in the end.
Government-run health care.
Right.
They don't like it. Their own Democrats don't like it, or the bill would have been passed. You've talked about what went wrong in the first segment. Well, here's the consequence of what went wrong. They can pass whatever they want. In the House, majority rules. In the Senate, they got 60.
Right.
It's Democrats that find this health care bill to be too repugnant to vote for. All the yelling about going it alone, they've been doing that from the beginning. All the attacks on Republicans, all the smears on the Tea Party and the grassroots activists and the normal people who rise up against this bill. Sideshow. As a practical legislative matter, if Democrats support the administration's plan, it would have been done by now. If Democrats support the administration's plan, it will get done in September. We are witnessing an internal debate amongst the Democratic Party, and what they're finding is that when you start a bill from the left with Waxman, Miller, and Pelosi, 3 millionaires from California, you have trouble getting to the center of American politics because your own people don't want to do it.
More legislative analysis then. How many Democrats, remind me of the numbers, there are 198 members, Republican members of the House, as I recall.
Oh, not that many.
No?
178.
Sorry, 178. So how many Blue Dog Democrats are there? How many?
It depends on your definition of Blue Dog. The organization, I think, has about 50.
50.
Or some,
well, let me put it this way then. If you're Rahm Emanuel down on Pennsylvania Avenue trying to game out your next step in this legislation, how many Democrats are giving you trouble right now?
Anyone who's gone home to their districts.
Really?
Well, you have a hardcore, even the Progressive Caucus isn't happy. They're in a whipsaw. The president, by laying out principles or passing suggestions as to what he thinks should be in his most important
let me quote you again. The president, quoting you, the president has a position.
Yeah.
He has no plan.
Right.
And again, he's farmed out the job of drafting an effort to reform, take over, regulate 1/6 of the economy to Nancy Pelosi and a handful of the House Democratic leadership.
And
right?
the problem is the whipsaw.
Okay, give me the whipsaw.
Now, look, if this were a question of governance and you saw the public reaction to this, you would say to yourself, okay.
Back off.
Okay, all right. I get it. You don't want to do it my way. Okay, let's work with both sides. Let's see if we can start in the center. What can we do? At this point, you're seeing the single payer now is a shibboleth of the left. He had floated trial balloons about maybe going toward the center and starting, like Senator Lieberman has recently said, start in the middle, scrap it, start in the middle and build out. But that's causing just a huge rift in his own party. Now, when we talked about what went wrong, a lot of times the Republican Party would start a bill on the right and do the same thing, try to get to the center. And you would see the arguments within the Republican Party and the cleavages within our different coalitions and different districts ultimately the public decided that's not how they wanted us to govern. Remember, the 2006 mantra was send George Bush a message and get rid of his rubber stamp Congress. Well, what we've been witnessing since the beginning of this administration has been, it's a pneumatic rubber stamp. I mean, artificial deadlines, bills written, no one's read, passed, sets another deadline, passed, sets another deadline. Maybe not. Public's had enough of that. But the Democratic Party itself is now having one of those internecine battles over what this thing will look like. And until they decide whether they can accept something and pass it or they really are serious.
So the Democrat from, let's leave aside Henry Waxman down there in Beverly Hills because they're all rich and they're all liberals. That's a safe Let's say the Democrat in Arkansas, where it's plausible that he could get a primary challenge that would be serious, or that there might even be a Republican. So that Democrat he's between a rock and a hard place. I'm testing this to see if I understand your point. On the one hand, the left of his party, the base, the people who raise the money and lick the envelopes, want single payer. They want effectively some sort of socialization of healthcare, and they are insistent on it. This matters a lot to them. And then he's going home and holding these town halls and discovering that his ordinary voters do not want it. They're suspicious. That's the problem he has.
Well, it's a typical problem. It's a problem that we used to see ourselves.
Okay. So what do they do about it?
Congress returns. They're going to have to make a decision.
Congress goes back into session on September 8th.
They're going to have to make a decision. They have a leader of the party. They complain that we don't have a quote-unquote leader of the party. Well, that's largely due to them winning the White House and controlling the Congress. So my point to them is, when I talked about the president having a position, not a plan, he now has a problem. Because what you're going to see if you watch, the left and the right of the Democratic Party, the center left, are starting to have this feud. And what will happen is a large part of what we went through is you will see primaries upon primaries between these two wings of the party, absent a presidential intervention to say, this is what I want. The president is the only one in that party right now that can come in and say, we're going to do it this way. And then at least they'll know where they are.
So he's off at Martha's Vineyard right now. Has he said to Rahm Emanuel, you got a week, I'm resting up here and enjoying myself, but when I get back to Washington, I want you to have figured out a plan. I don't know. I'm not privy to those conversations. I would think that the president would just say, look, this is what we're going to do come hell or high water. We're either going to go to the center and work out, try to build a bipartisan bill to deal with specific problems, or we're going to go for the whole thing and make a mess. The problem that they have, first and foremost, though, is not Democrats, not even Republican. The American people don't want this. Got it. Segment 4, the war. First, Iraq. Retired General Jack Keane stated on this program not too long ago that the war in Iraq is substantially won. You'd agree with that?
I don't think anything's substantially won. You're either won or you've lost. So if we're making progress with the Petraeus plan, yes. If the surge worked to date, yes. Are we close to giving them a chance to do what every country would hope would have? Is you have your liberty, now keep it. You cannot guarantee the liberty of another country, but you can give them a fighting chance to keep it.
Responsibility now rests properly with the Iraqis, not with us.
Not fully. Not fully yet. Remember what General Petraeus did, and those soldiers did, despite their Congress in 2007 telling them it was doomed to failure, has been to jump what is generally, a 9 to 12 to 11 year counterinsurgency, and done it in about 2 years. So this is fragile. It is very fragile. The reconstruction that should have been occurring since 2003 at the grassroots is continuing. It's settling down, but you can see as we pull back from the cities, it also offers an opportunity for other nations or people within Iraq itself to cause problems. So I would say that it is fragile, but you can't simply say something is substantially won and walk away. At this point, we were making progress. Progress is fragile. We have to hold that progress because it will affect Afghanistan, Pakistan, everything else.
Are you satisfied that the Obama administration is conducting the Iraq aspect of the war on terror adequately at present?
Well, it depends. If you're looking at the specific theater of Iraq, the concern would have been a hasty withdrawal. A lot of us were very happy to see that the president, upon entering office, did not go in there and say, okay, yeah, we're setting an artificial deadline, we're all going to leave.
Right.
No, it was a far more responsible approach. If you're talking about Afghanistan, that remains to be seen, although his emphasis on Afghanistan, his understanding that it is a crucial theater is very heartening too. So I think that you'll see some bipartisan, where it is warranted, praise for the president for at least not doing many of the things that had come up in the primary as campaign slogan.
The day before this taping, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Admiral Mike McMullen, said that the situation in Afghanistan is, quote, deteriorating, and the commander on the ground, General McChrystal, is completing a strategic review that is widely expected to result in a request for more troops. Not long after coming into office, President Obama increased our commitment of troops to Afghanistan by 17,000. I'm a layman. I read the press. It looks as though the Pentagon is teeing up a request for more. Your comment?
I'll wait for the general's review to come forward. I would not be surprised if that was the case, but we'll allow him to make that determination. One of the fundamental problems we have with Afghanistan is the incursions from within the tribal areas of Pakistan.
Right.
We have to work with the Pakistanis. As dangerous and difficult as Afghanistan is, we have got to work with the Pakistan government, not only in terms of a military assistance within those regions to help stop the incursions, but we also have to work with them in a preemptive way to ensure a civil society there. They're our partners, they're our allies. What we cannot allow is to have a solely military focus or a heavily military focus in Afghanistan without paying any attention to a lot of the deep-seated problems that the people of Pakistan have in terms of governance, in terms of infrastructure. Because what will happen is, if you stay in Afghanistan long enough, even to make it work, which I think is still possible, if Afghanistan deteriorates to the point it becomes heavily radicalized, that is a nuclear-armed country. It is on the border of another nuclear-armed country. They do not have the best of relations. So you have to view the whole war for freedom in the context running the gamut from the Middle East and including many of the neighboring countries such as Communist China and Putin's Russia that can play a role here constructively or deleteriously.
A question about the difficulty of conducting a war in a democracy. Listen to a few figures, a poll from The Economist. Question, would you say the U.S. is winning the war in Afghanistan? Yes, 18%. No, 42%. Do you favor increasing the number of troops? Favor, 32%. Oppose, 41%. What do you think will eventually happen? The United States will win the war, 35%. The United States will withdraw without winning, 65%. So the question here is, the president faces in some ways the same problem that President Bush faced, which is that conducting a war in a democracy is hard. What should the Republican Party do? Is this one area where there's where it's the responsibility of Republicans to stand with the president and try to help him bring the public along?
Well, first, thank God we live in a democracy. Even if we are unfortunately drawn into the war for freedom, we were attacked on September 11th by people in Afghanistan. We'll leave the Iraq argument out of that. But what you also have to understand is look at Iraq. You just said the general was on. I would think most Americans think we are substantially winning now in Iraq. Mm-hmm. That was not the case in 2006. Events on the ground tend to dictate it. Democracies, again, thank God, do not like long, drawn-out wars. We are not a bloodthirsty people. Free people tend to love life and tend to despise war, as it should be. But what we have to do, and we've never been anything but willing to be helpful with Afghanistan with the president.
We, meaning the House Republicans.
House Republicans, Senate Republicans, too.
Right.
You have not seen any gratuitous shots by any Republican that I can recall as to what the president is or is not doing in Afghanistan. In many ways, we are honoring what we had said we had hoped would happen when President Bush was in office. We understand the responsibility and the necessity of winning in Afghanistan, just as we did in Iraq. And I think we are all willing to help the president do that as a matter of national security. And as terms of the polls, the American people are very practical people. If they feel that something is working, they will change their opinion of it. If they think something isn't working, they'll change their opinion of that too.
Segment 5, final segment, alas. Rebuilding the GOP. Journalist and historian Sam Tannenhouse, in his new book, you looked at this one yet? The Death of Conservatism. Ready?
I'm waiting for the Cliff's Notes.
It's a short book.
I'm on a university. Maybe I can pick one up.
This moment's revitalized liberalism has illuminated a truth that should have been apparent a decade ago. Movement conservatism is not simply in retreat, it is outmoded. The evidence is not recorded merely in election returns and poll ratings. The more telling evidence is in the realm of ideas and argument, I say to the chairman of the House Republican Policy Committee. It is there that conservatism is most glaringly disconnected from the realities now besetting America. Close quote.
Oh, it's like it when an academic tells me what reality is. My question, not you. I think he's absolutely
Sam's
wrong.
a journalist too, but
well, whatever. Right. Great, he's doubled his pleasure. But
all right,
look, all I hear out of the Democrats and out of liberalism is the 1970s. We're in the 1970s. Look at cap and trade. That's nothing but Carter-era environmental policy, tax increases. Okay, maybe we'll go back further than the 70s. I give them more credit. Look at the foreign policy
30s.
of the progressive wing of the Democratic Party. It's the 1970s. Look, the problem is that the Democrats fundamentally have a highly centralized, bureaucratic 20th century, mid-20th century model of governance. They're trying to stick on a 21st century globalized world. It will not work. I would ask the gentleman to look around the world and see where the information revolution, globalization itself in terms of trade and in terms of people coming together, that has empowered citizens and consumers. To foist a 20th century model, you could even go back to the 19th century and say that somehow this is reform is not going to work. You can look at the healthcare debate. We're going to have the government do it. There's nothing. So let's disempower citizens. Let's disempower consumers. Let's highly centralize and empower the government to take care of it because the bureaucracy knows best. That is antithetical to everything that is going on. And that is what the central tenets of liberalism are, have been, and will remain, including the redistribution of wealth, the empowerment and expansion of government. So I would argue that he's absolutely wrong.
Let me try something else on you. A few statistics here, simple ones. 178 Republicans.
I don't do story problems.
178 Republicans in the House. Do I have the number right this time?
179. We got the McHugh seat coming up.
All right. 179 Republicans in the House. How many black representatives? 0. How many Jewish? 1. How many Hispanic? 4. How many women? 17. So I put it to you that the GOP as represented in the House of Representatives looks like the party of white males. And white males aren't going to get you to a majority coalition in the nation.
Well, I would ask the Democratic Party if they would give us back all the female members that they beat in 2006 and 2008 on our side, if they would give us any of the African American or Hispanic candidates or Jewish candidates that we had run and they had beat. I would also ask them to note that one of the places we're being beaten is in the Northeast and in the Midwest, which are very highly, in many of these seats, such as mine, very Catholic seats. And so I think that when you look at the Republican Party, you can look at it as a collection of groups, which we do not do. We look at it as a collection of people who voluntarily, individually come together behind sets of principles. And you can vote for them, or you can play that game as to how they add up. Now, as a son of a Truman, Irish, Catholic, Democratic father, I would not be in the party except for Ronald Reagan and the principles that he set forward for it. So you can look back at a time when Catholics did not vote for the Republican Party, and very few Catholics were represented within the Republican Party. You can then go through other groups. You can continue to see historically where African Americans were largely Republicans, and now they are not. But there are always changes, but I don't view it that way. I view it seat by seat. But if the Democrats want to talk about why we don't have more of any individual background in the party, well, I would argue that they should concede those seats to us so we can be more as they would like to see us.
178 Republicans in the House, 77 from the South. From New England, 0. The Republican Party, as represented in the House of Representatives, is the party of the South and the Plains and the Rocky Mountains, and you can't get to a majority coalition in the country without the seaboards. So is there something in that the Republican Party, for one reason or another, has lost the ability to resonate, to reach people in the urban seaboard areas?
Sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. If you look at 2006 election results, we had an unpopular war that was not going well, that happened on the Republican watch. We were thrown out because of it. If you look at 2008 McCain and President Obama were relatively close until the Wall Street bailout and the recession really took hold. A lot of us in Michigan felt it sooner. War, prosperity. You had two major issues the Republican Party was wrong on. It doesn't mean there's been a fundamental 80-year shift or 40-year shift for them any more than there was for us. I think what the people really want to see is they want a Republican Party that is philosophical, that understands you work for the district that you were elected by, you have to move in a philosophical fashion. They don't want crazy radical stuff from Republicans or Democrats. See, the Republican Party was viewed as a creator of chaos to the American voter in 2006 in Iraq and in the domestic economy in 2008. They are now viewing President Obama and the Democrats as exacerbating that chaos with things such as cap and tax, $1 trillion stimulus, and now we're talking about $1 trillion health care takeover. But the Republican Party...
So the opening here is to present the GOP as the party of domestic tranquility. I'm trying a little Kirk on you again here.
What we are is we are a party that believes in the emancipation, the inherent sanctity and dignity of the individual, everyone's God-given right to freedom, both at abroad and at home. If we spread it abroad, we protect it at home. We believe 5 fundamental principles. Our liberty is from God, not the government. Our sovereignty is in our souls, not the soil. Our security is from strength, not surrender. Our prosperity is from the private sector, not the public sector. And our truths are self-evident, not relative. We agree that that's the philosophical basis. Different members from different districts may have different takes on applying it to the challenges of globalization and getting America forward.
Some good news. In late June, the generic congressional poll, if the election were held today, would you vote for a Democrat or Republican, showed the GOP ahead of the Democrats for the first time in months and months and months. And a narrow advantage has by now, late summer, widened. Recent poll showed the GOP up by 4 points, which is not huge, but it ain't nothing. Question 1 of 2, is that temporary? If President Obama, when Congress returns to Washington on September 8th and the president says, look, here's where we're going on health care. Let's stop this nonsense. I'm uniting my party. We're moving ahead. Does the country swing back to the Democrats? Is this temporary or is this something deep that you can take advantage of in 2010 elections?
Well, to finish the previous point and answer your question, first, I don't believe in polls. They go up, they go down. They're based upon the practicality of policies that are presented by the governing party. We are not them right now. So their policies are unpopular. They could change them. They can make them more popular. I would argue they'd have to come closer to us.
This generic poll isn't going to make it easier for you to recruit good candidates for 2010?
I don't believe in polls. I think they will know in their communities whether what's been proposed by Washington and some of it that's been implemented is good for them or not. And if there's discontent within districts, people will rise up and say, I want to run to try to change it. I don't think centralized, nationalized parties are the best way to go in terms of candidate recruitment. I think you have to have people motivated by what they watch from their friends, their neighbors, their community. Nisbet, read him. But my point is about the Republican Party is if we are seen as a party of fundamental principles the American people agree with, and we are committed to conserving a cherished way of life and allowing the American people to channel constructive change by empowering them to do so, we will be where we need to be in the age of globalization as a party.
Congressman Thaddeus McCotter, chairman of the House Republican Policy Committee. Thank you.
Now, don't give me that guy's book as a going away present.
The Sam Tannenhouse. I'll get him to sign it for you.
Yeah, can I put my head on it and stand on it when I change my light bulbs?
It's not that thick.
I can imagine.
For Uncommon Knowledge and the Hoover Institution, I'm Peter Robinson.